In this video, we want to talk with you about backyard chickens and this whole bird flu thing going on and kind of give you our opinion on it as well as some information that we researched. So that's what this video is all about. If you're interested, here we go. So in today's video, we're going to talk a lot about H5N1 because it's been so hyped up in the media, and we want to just give you some information with what we researched. And a lot of the research that we did was from USDA, APHIS, which stands for Animal Plant Health Inspection Service, and the University of Minnesota. And some of it's from the CDC as well. So you can take that however you would like to as well. I know there's a lot of lack of trust in some of those names that I just named, but that is where a lot of the information came from that we're going to be talking about today. So I wanted to make sure to include that's where it's from. One of the first things to know in thinking about having backyard chickens with the whole bird flu situation that's going on is bird flu is from birds that land near your chickens and then they cross-contaminate. When a bird has H5N1, like a goose or a duck, something like that, those are big carriers of this bird flu. And when they land and then they share the food and the water and all of that, and then their feces also, and it all gets cross-contaminated. So preventing the cross-contamination of your chickens with wild birds, that is a big step that is going to really help make sure that you are preventing further spread and spread to your backyard chicken. And how you would go about doing that? Well, you can see our first little chicken coop we made right here when we had just a few chicken. And the intent of it was to roll it around and then have them spend their day in this portion, which is super tiny, and then spend the night in this portion, which is a decent size for just a coop. And how you would go about doing that is keeping them in an actual enclosed area like this, or we have one over there. See that tube that we aren't using currently? We said choose to, but we're not. It has a larger enclosed area, and that way you just keep the the native birds away from your chickens, and you can help mitigate that spread. Now, with that said, of course, a bird could be flying over top and could defecate into the coop, and now we have a potential spread. And I mean, that's something that you're just not going to be able to really control, or at least we as farmers at our farm, we're not going to go through the hoops to control that. So that is a potential risk, but it really does minimize the risk. The chances are a lot less than right here if we decided to keep our chickens next to, we have a ditch over there, and we decided to let our chickens go down to the ditch, and there's wild ducks down there and wild geese down there, and then they're cross-contaminating a lot. They're drinking the same water. They're all around each other. That's much more of a risk than a situation like this. And also right now, it is the middle of winter. There isn't a large migration going on or anything as far as native birds coming in back to Montana. We're way up north, and that's just something to think about. That time of year, having our birds out like this is fine as far as what we believe. We believe it's fine. Another thing to think about with that is feeding them. And a lot of people, sometimes they will use a trough, kind of like the one right there, where you just kind of like put food out in the open or sprinkle food on the ground, things like that. Trying to feed them in more of an enclosed area where other native birds can't get to will help mitigate the risk of that cross-contamination happening. Our feeders that we choose to use are these. This helps mitigate it a little bit. If some scarlings did come and they're out here, they could definitely still get in there if they wanted to, which they probably would want to get into there. But the chance of it happening is just less due to the fact that it's a little bit tucked away and hidden. It's excluding some things from getting in there, and it's just not just out in the open. We really just did this because it was economic and it helped the birds not knock the grain and everything everywhere and their feed everywhere. That's why we did it, because it was a good way to just have the food stay dry and all sorts of reasons. But that's another little added bonus for it. Now, you could amp this up quite a bit and only feed them in their coop and things like that. We don't right now this time of year. This is what we choose to do. A peep behind you in here. Oh, another egg. Hey. Oh, nothing, no. So, as far as other animals go, in our research, we learned that geese and ducks are a big carrier of H5N1. And a lot of times, ducks and geese, they just carry it and they don't actually show symptoms. As far as other animals that could potentially get H5N1, dairy cows, although the research that we found, no dairy cows have died from it. They have just become sick. And so they really kept tabs on them in dairy farms and such. 3 grizzly bears in Montana were found to have H5N1 back in 2023, and those grizzly bears were euthanized, and they were just doing some strange things, walking in circles in fields, I guess, and after they were euthanized, that was discovered. So it can spread to grizzly bears. It can also spread to coyotes. It can spread to raccoons. It could probably even spread to your dogs or cats if they're around a lot of it. And as we've heard the big hype in the media, it can spread to people. So let's talk a little bit more about how much that's really happening. So people working in these big poultry farms, in my mind, are really different than backyard chicken owners. People working in big poultry operations, they are dealing with thousands, hundreds of thousands of birds at a time. It is a massive amount of birds compared to 60, 40. I don't really know how many chickens we have right now, but somewhere along those lines. And the environment they're kept in is completely different. There's so many different things, and the tight quarters that are kept in, things are just different. So, as far as people, according to the CDC, they're finding the antibodies in people who didn't even know that they had ever contracted the illness. So, they contracted it, recovered from it, thought it was a typical cold. Maybe it didn't even affect them, but they had the antibodies, which means that they had the bird flu. They weren't hospitalized and they weren't very sick to the point to look into what was happening to them. Therefore, let's just take that into account a little bit, that it has been going through us a little bit. And with all viruses, things come and they go and they change, and there can be a lot of shifts that happen, but we have been exposed to it at some level, people in general, and it hasn't been a big the sky is falling thing at this point. But in Louisiana, there was a man who you've probably heard about on the news who was a backyard chicken owner. He was an older gentleman, and his health may have not been quite the best, and he did pass away from either H5N1 or something else with H5N1. H5N1 was found after he passed away. We just have to really be thinking about what is being pushed out there. This was one gentleman, and let's just think about that a little bit. And I really don't want to talk poorly about this gentleman. The utmost respect. I'm just trying to get the information out there so that we can take a step back and think about this a little bit more logically. So, what do you do if you find a dead bird in your flock? It's just one bird. Sometimes that happens. If you're a chicken owner, you know that. Just make sure you're taking proper precautions. Probably put on some gloves, bag it up, bury it deep, something like that. Get rid of it, remove it from your chickens, and move on. Just be cautious because you never know what it died from. You don't know that it is bird flu that bird passed away from. So just be cautious and then keep an eye on your flock after that. We have had chickens pass away often. Every now and again we lose a couple birds, and there can be so many factors when you lose a chicken. So if you find a bunch of dead bird, that would be a little bit different. You would probably want to contact the USDA, the APHIS portion of the USDA again, and let them know what you're finding so that they can come out. They have a lot of different workers and a lot of different components to USDA APHIS, and they will come out probably and want to look things over and see what happened and kind of do a little bit of investigating. And that would probably be the responsible thing to do if you ended up finding a bunch of dead chickens in your coop or around your coop. And with bird flu, it's my understanding that most people don't notice a bunch of symptoms. You just kind of come out one day and chickens are no longer living. So that's just kind of something to keep in mind. I know some of the stuff that I just said may sound a little bit scary, but let's take a step back again. Bird flu has been around for years. A lot of people have owned backyard chickens for years. It is an amazing thing to do to own backyard chickens, have your own eggs, let your children experience what it's like to grow up with animals and, give these animals, right, a life that is going to be different than if they're just raised inside of a big shop, warehouse, in an industrial setting These birds, whenever it is summertime, they get to go scratch around in a big area. They get to eat worms and grubs and just like be chickens. And it is a fun part of life that would be really sad for people to choose to not experience because they are scared to get backyard chickens because they're worried about bird flu, even though it's not like something that is really just devastating flock after flock and just, really crushing our lives and definitely something to stay away from. Let's think about the facts here. And it's not something that is that prevalent, and it is something that there are some things you can do to kind of mitigate your risk. And I know I already spoke earlier. Right now, our chickens are out in the open, and, if some starlings come down here, which they're not even out this time of year, and they come and scratch around, like, yes, there is some risk there, but otherwise, we are doing other things to mitigate our risk. I just hope that this video can kinda remind people that if you want to have backyard chickens, you should go for it. I think that's my opinion. That's the opinion part of this, because it is just it's fun and it is beneficial. And right now, egg prices are like through the roof, and we can't control that as consumers. But guess what? We can control. I water glassed some eggs last year when our chickens were producing like crazy, and we have fresh eggs right now that are essentially, well, at this point, I mean, we fed them and everything, we paid that, but they're like free, you know, at this point. And it just helps you be a little bit more self-sufficient. Anyways, that's this video. I realize this video might be a little controversial and might get some comments, but if you have more to add, I would love to hear your thoughts on the matter and just drop it in the comments and we'll catch you on the next video. And I'm going to go inside because it is getting kind of cold out here.